Going to call the August meeting for our board to order. I do look and I see no one from the general public, so we'll move on to item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes of our prior meeting. We've all had a chance to review them. I'd like to at this time ask for any additions and or corrections.
I've got two things I'd like to ask. Number one, when it says in there and it talks about the increase, switch pages there. I don't have it right in front of me. Go down. We'll go another page. Right there, where it says increase residential customers charged by $3 per month. Could we put what that actually is now in there? Is that out of place? I think what we determined was it was $16.42, and then we add $3 to it, so it's $19.42. And then under the GSA one, I'm just saying if we want to go back and reference a point sometime, we can go back to the previous year's minutes and say, okay, here's what we actually are. I don't know what everybody's thought is on that, but I'd like to add that figure if we could, if it's
Absolutely
not
no problem to
objective.
do that, Mr. Chairman.
Next,
That's what I was going to say. I don't see any problem in that being done. And as we do believe that these type of increases are going to be necessary in the future, that would give us like a reference point.
right. And then I have one more request or thought. The information that Mr. Mitchell gave us, is there a reason why we can't include it in the minutes so that we could refer back to it, the presentation? I mean, we didn't get a copy of that, or I don't think we did. Is there any way we could, is there an objection to putting that information in there? Just as a point of reference, or is that proprietary information?
No,
It's not proprietary
I'd say
information.
we could put whatever you want in there. They're your minutes.
That presentation, I don't remember, I don't know of anything, there's nothing in here of that presentation.
I can load it on your iPad.
Yeah, that'll
if you
work.
want me
I
to
mean,
do
just so we
that.
can go back and look at it,
Yeah,
or
I can do
put it in
that.
a packet that we had.
I'll do
Yeah,
that.
okay. That's all I had.
So we good with just putting it in on the iPad, or do we have to put it in?
I think putting it on the iPad, just so, I mean, I just want to be able to go back and look at it if I want to.
I understand.
I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are.
That's easy.
I was going to say that.
Is that reasonable?
That sounds like an easy,
Is that two reasonable
fix.
requests?
Very easy.
Sounds like it to
Okay,
me.
that's all I got.
Anybody else? Any thoughts, ideas? All right, then I will entertain a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes of our last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second? Jump right in there anytime. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by like sign? Let's move on to item number 4, which is the approval of our vouchers. We've all had the opportunity to review those. And again, at this time, I will entertain, and the staff, of course, obviously will entertain it. Any additions, corrections, questions? Hearing none, again, I will ask for a motion and second for the approval of the vouchers. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let's move on then to item number 5. That is the review and approval of the monthly reports for the month of June. We'll call on Mr. Fagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you have in front of you is the summary of the revenue and expense. And for the month of June, the electric department had a net income of $754,000. We'll talk a little more about that in a second. And the water department had $161,000 net income. These numbers should line up with our audit. You know, we take a lot of pride in reconciling all our accounts and making sure they match up with our audit, which they'll be working on next week. So we have a good history of no adjustments on that. If you look over here to the to the difference of where we were to our forecast. A negative number, again, I'll remind you, a negative number is a negative thing, and a positive number is a positive thing. So sales were under 3.6, but power costs were also under 3.8. So that we actually came out a little ahead there. Our operating and maintenance expense are about $718,000 favorable under what we projected, and so we end up with a $932,000 difference over what the initial forecast was 18 months ago. If you look at these budget numbers over here at the end, that's kind of the percentage that comes out. That lets you know how much 2% makes a big difference in the number at the bottom. Now let's talk about this $754,000 for the month, because you might be going, good grief, that's a lot of money. You see this right here, this admin and gen expenses, it's got a $314,000 credit, and that is because, and we've talked about this, GASB 68, and that what that does is a big calculation of how much the actuaries say that you have to book for your liability at the year end. Anytime you put more into that fund than the actuary tells you to, at the end of the year, there's a good chance you're going to have a credit. And that's what we do, because we're not 100% funded. We would like to be there, but we're not there. We put in more than what the actuary tells us to. And so the way GASB tells us we have to do that is show a credit. Now, I don't agree with that, because I think it's very misleading. It makes it look like you're making more money than you really are, because we didn't get that money in. We should put that money into our pension fund. Also, we true up at year end. We true up our health fund, which we're going to do a report on that later. So at the end of the year, we say we can't have on our books any more liability than what we know claims are laying out there. And we've had a good year, as you'll see here when we do the health fund report. So that ended up with the credit. But the GASB credit alone in the electric department was $400,000. And then the liability on the health was $200,000. So that's $600,000 of that $754,000 that were just journal entry type things. They're good things, don't get me wrong. They're good things, but that's what those are. And there's a whole lot more to that GASB. I don't even want to try to get into it, because I don't even totally understand it myself. I've spent days and days trying to figure this out, and the auditors have helped me get the numbers to where they need to be. You got the same situation in the water department, water and sewer. You got a $63,000 credit there. They ended up with about $108,000 in a GASB 68 credit. And then in the health fund, they ended up with about a $44,000 credit. So that's why you had such big numbers for the month. I don't want you thinking we made a killing in those months. So, but it's still good months. You know, we had good year. I think we're in good shape. So, and if you got any more specific questions, I'll attempt to answer them. Just don't ask a whole lot about GASB 68. You know?
So my comment to city council is going to be that there were journal entries made during the month that related back to GASB 68 doing with the pension plan. And there was a journal entry made in regards to the health savings plan.
That's right.
So while it looks like that $754,000, $600,000 of that was journal entries made
That's correct.
based on accounting
That's
processes.
That's correct.
So to true it up and make it in line with the others, 154,000 or 150-ish thousand.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay. Now I have another question, and then
Okay.
I'm done with questions.
All right.
I think. I know that one of the things that we try to look at, or that has been talked about at different times, is how much reserve do we have? Like, how many days worth of reserve do we have?
Cash reserve.
Cash reserve. I mean, I think like TVA has a standard, I guess, or a suggestion that they like for you to have. Is there any way to get that somewhere reported somewhere just to us each month, that we have 13 days of reserve, or
We have
20?
13 days.
That's
Do we
exactly
really?
where we're
I
at.
just guessed.
13.
That's pretty good. Well, maybe we don't need it. Maybe I just need it. I'll report it,
Yes,
I'll report on it again next month. But is there a way for us to, maybe, because, I mean, one of the things that I would like to do as a board member, I'd like to see that 13 maybe grow.
We'll put it right on this report.
Is that a reasonable request
Because
as
we
well?
track it, we're tracking it all the time.
Okay. Good.
you know, that's, and Jim, you and I guess and this might be dangerous, but we were thinking along the same lines on this. I was gonna
Ease
say.
up, Gary.
I was
Come
gonna
on,
say-
Gary.
I was gonna say, how does our cash position relate to the same time
Right.
last year?
Right.
In terms of number of days?
Right.
So
Okay.
I
Thank
was
you.
thinking the same thing, and yeah, I think that's a great idea if that's incorporated into our, like our revenue and expense summary on a monthly basis.
That if it was true.
Number of days cash.
Now, the water department's 275 days,
Wow.
so.
That's misleading too, because one pump can take care of that. So.
That's right.
But we'll put it right here under net income in a box, days of cash, calculated,
What is I mean, I know that there's different thoughts on that, but what is a reasonable,
40.
really?
40 is where we'd like to be.
I think that's part of why that we're working on getting the $3 annually so that we get to the point where that the cost of delivering the product to the consumer is fully funded.
When-
I know we all don't want to overcharge people, but, you know, I do think we have to be very cognizant of the fact that times they are changing, and, you know, we're gonna have to make these adjustments in
When
order
we,
to offset.
Tried
those
to make a
changes.
move in April of 2011, is what we went back to. We shifted from end-use billing, which is the process of that is difficult to grasp on the quick run. Some of you who've been around a long time have got that figured out, to where TVA, there was a fixed margin between what our wholesale cost and what our retail costs were. So even if our sales went down, our margin continued to buffer on the top of that wholesale cost. So there was always more or less the fixed margin, which ran around 20%. And that left no risk because it was impervious to great shifts in weather, because we weren't dealing with peak and demand. And at that time, because there wasn't that risk of the exposure, we were running as little as 3 days, you know, which under anybody's book would say that's probably too tight. But there was a comfortability factor in there, because irrespective of what the weather did, our margin was constant, and we were very good at forecasting expense. So we were living, you know, within that parameter and had no problem. Now, because of this exposure of risk associated with the weather and peaks, and that is continuing to tighten up as TVA continues to shift the risk of the weather. When they're paying 16 times more, they're selling to us 16 times less than the cost of the power that they're buying on that hot end. And now they've shifted that to us and saying that we're now going to pay that 16 times the cost, you know, should it become necessary. And that's why we need to have some kind of reserve that is substantial. And some utilities have too much money. And in my opinion, you know, we need to accurately charge the customers that are using, which includes a safety buffer and a reserve. But to have, if you're gonna spend $30 million or $40 million on a capital project and you have that in cash, that tells me that you've spent and charged the customers too much to begin with, because I don't know that you need that kind of reserve. So what we want to do is get an appropriate reserve, and we think that that's a good number to shoot for. I would be happy with 30, but 40 is a very good a very good amount to shoot for.
Would
And that's a
someone do-
little bit misleading because we do have safety nets in play on our bond issues, you see. So one could then say, if you're going to calculate an exposure, and that is a fixed expense, the P&I associated with that, we have reserves already in play to address that. And what do we've got, about $500,000 in storm damage contingency? What is that running now, Dudley?
It's not.
It's a little less than 300,000.
Yeah. not much.
258,000.
Right.
Would you do a quick definition of the sinking funds and other special?
Yes, we have a reserve fund and a sinking fund. A reserve fund, we put in play that accounts for the current principal and interest within the next year. Everything's current when it's within the accounting year. So we know we have a principal and interest payment. Instead of trying to suck all of that out of 1 month, we spread that, the cost of the P&I, over a 12-month period. So we reserve that each month, a 12th each month. So when that P&I becomes due, then all we do is transfer that out and pay it. A sinking fund we have that we take and look at whenever we borrow, and whenever Dudley and I over the years, we borrow the money, we look at the highest principal and interest payment within any year. So whatever the highest payment is, because some have balloon payments on the end and some work up, we look at that highest payment and we say, that is what we want to reserve for, to have that in play. So whatever happens, we're never going to be in a position to where we're not able to meet our requirements. So we'll have a whole year of reserve on that. That we set aside money for every month until we hit that P&I. And then we use that to pay off the last year of the bond. We'll just shoot all of that, and there's generally some left over because the last year isn't always the highest year. But that's what we do. We reserve fund for the year, for the current amount due, and we have funds available for the highest P&I for any period within the life of that bond.
Where do those funds physically reside?
We have them
They're at Capital Mark Bank right now.
where we invest. I mean, we're getting 4.50 on some of those, right?
We're getting.
0.450, right,
They're at Capital Mark.
right.
Capital Mark Bank. And the other special, that's the sinking funds he's talking about. In the other special funds, that's primarily your health fund.
And what we do in the health fund is Blue Cross says, what will it cost to insure us? In other words, if we went and said, we are no longer going to self-insure, we want to insure just like mostly everybody else does. And how much does that cost? They give us a number. And that is what we fund for. We fund out of that number, saying this is what we reserve, what it would cost if we were exposed like everyone else, because we couldn't self-fund again because of our size. And I've told some of you all the story of how we came into this self-funding arena. It was back in 1984, and we worked on that. And over the years, because we were only funding actual instead of this premium cost that Blue Cross would charge us, millions of dollars. You know, they were trying to get us at 17 and 18% jumps. I mean, now I hear some are even going up. I talked to a guy, 40%. You know, what are we going to go up this year? What is CUT going to go up this year? We're not going up. There is no 40% jump. You know, because we're doing great. And why are we doing great? We fund our employees, we fund the dependents, we have incentive programs, we have a gym back there that they're walking on. Nobody abuses the system, and because of that, all of our costs are low. And Dudley's, this is the board meeting where we annually review that, and you will see in terms of premium cost, administrative cost, And what we have funded, which is not $1 more than what Blue Cross would charge us, what they would charge the city or you or the school or anywhere else, that's what we fund, and this is how much money we have left over. So, with everybody else going up 40, we're not going up, not 1%.
Where's the 13-day figure come from?
You take your annual expense and you divide it by what it costs you per day by year, and then you take your cash and you work it that way. So how many days do you have of your annual figure of expense divided by 365? And in that, you don't count depreciation, and there's certain components in that, but that's where that comes from.
So really, our sinking funds and other special funds and
They're
the
not-
assets
they're
that we
not
got
in-
doesn't factor in.
They're not in that 13 days, no.
So all that's over
Because
to the
those,
side.
those are set to the side for these debt expenses and things. This is general,
Safety valve for,
right.
so we've built in a safety blanket separate of our 13-day rainy day fund.
Yes, I've got
So if we really-
$100, which I'm now willing to tell everybody, stuffed in my wallet in a hidey place. And then I've got cash in the car, in a hiding
Tell us
place.
where else it
I mean,
is.
I'm just saying, we are so hidey places on this kind of stuff because we really, that's
three
the
colleges.
conservative way. We think it's the best way. That way, we're never caught, ever caught. The circumstances for us to get financially in a bind, because we're going to have a plenty of vision out there to see something negative coming. And if we get hit with something unexpected, if a substation blows up, of course, we'll be out borrowing money for that because I won't use the liquidity. This is what I'll be recommending. We don't use our liquidity in order to fund that. It's always about being liquid. It's about meeting our bills, and it's about having the appropriate reserves in order to be healthy to do that. So these bonds we're going to pay off one of these days, and really whatever year that they're due to be paid off, that's essentially going to be a free year because we'll use our reserves to pay that last year off.
So the 13 days is mathematically, we also need to look at our reserve or our contingency blanket to see really the whole picture of the
Well,
current
no, because
status
we're
of-
not using the 13 days when we calculate our expenses. Do you see now? So these are operating expenses. So the P&I is not part of that calculation.
That 13 days is employee cost and TVA bills.
That's right. Well, TVA is the hog of everything.
Yeah,
you
right.
know.
But that's what
that's
that-
right.
that's what that
right. It's the
13 days would
maintenance.
be.
It's lines. It's
Total operating expense?
That's right. That's right. So we're not mixing apples and
That
oranges.
$1 million principal payment's not in that 13 days.
Right. And that's why the reserves aren't in that because
That's right.
those payments are
Right.
outside of that.
That
Those
money's
are
basically,
operating costs.
that money is spoken for.
That's designated,
Well, that's debt expense, what we call,
yeah.
It's like the
debt
difference in
service.
checking and savings accounts, basically.
Because that's not a component of operating, you say.
A specific purpose for that savings account, which
And we
the-
have
what-
7
know that
years
debt.
of bonds, is that correct?
No, we go out to 2023, is it?
2023, we're paid off,
Mm-hmm.
everything.
8,150,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
And we got 3 million up in our sinking fund just in case we,
Well, the 8,000,001 doesn't include interest,
I got you.
and that's growing every day.
Not at .04 either, right?
the first thing that we would,
That's
we would
right.
do if we needed money, the first thing that we would do if something catastrophic happened is we would go into that $250,000 reserve fund.
I will say in the water and sewer department, you know, you've got every number there is positive, if you see where I'm wiggling there. Every number is positive, sales are up, expenses are under, and so that ends up being a really good year. The reason the sewer's up so much is ACWA had a really high year, so. That's all I've got, Mr. Chairman, unless there are any more questions.
Do we, pardon me, do we have any more questions? Thank you all for the clarity and the responses to the questions that have been asked. If I hear, excuse me, no additional questions, then I will ask for a motion and for a second for the approval of the monthly reports for the month of June.
Make a motion to approve monthly reports for June.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by like sign. Okay, let's move on here to item number 6 on our agenda, which is our project status report for electric. Mr. Bowles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have before you the latest project status report for the electric department. Projects there, most all the projects that we did had in our last budget are now complete or rolled over to that closing report. The West Norris conversion and the Eagle Bend Drive are this year's projects. We're showing them at 70% and 60% complete, respectively. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have relative to these projects or anything else engineering or operating wise.
Are there any questions, comments? Thank you. Let's move on then to the closing report. And again, that's Mr. Bowles.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything unless someone has specific questions
Okay.
about any of these projects.
Are there any? Okay. Let's move on then to item number 7, which is the approval of work order number 385. And Ernie, we'll just keep picking on you. Mr.
Thank you.
Electric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is one of our capital projects in your budget for this year. It's in the budget for $185,000, and no, we did not jimmy the number to get it to the $185,053. That is just the way it came out. So we're pretty happy that all that jived up that way. This is a project to relieve a loaded number 6 copper line those are really the most hazardous that we have on the system, so we are identifying those, and especially those that are heavily loaded, and doing our dead level best to eliminate those from the system. This will be our aerial cable system, which is very rugged and proven to be very durable, and this work will be done by our own forces here. We recommend your approval to proceed with this work order 385 as submitted.
Where is Bull Run Road?
It's out between South Clinton and Claxton. It runs to the west along where Melton Hill Lake is there.
Is it,
It runs from New Henderson Road on the far west end, and it intersects at Clinton Highway.
It's the first road to the right past Weigels, out there in Claxton, Charles.
Past Clacton, yeah.
Right there,
Past,
kinda
past Edgemore.
where-
parallels Edgemore?
Yes. Yes.
Kind of wanders around out there, but it's as close to parallel, I guess.
That's not what
as-
we would call parallel in math class. But sort of.
Sort of. I like it.
What's the significance with the 185 when you said you didn't do that on purpose. I'm slow.
The budget that we.
It's
forecast
$53 off from what was in
18
the
months
budget.
ago, we use typical figures on that based upon, line length and how many, but when we do the actual estimate, it's down to every nut, bolt,
I don't want to take credit for being that close, is what you're saying.
Well, we're saying, we got pretty close this time. Now, the actual cost,
Take credit for
which
it.
is the third component, as Charles points out, sometimes that can be over, sometimes under, but it's rarely gonna be right on the button. But at least we've jived the budget and the estimate.
Motion approved.
I was gonna say, any other questions? Motion and second, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Okay, let's move on, and I believe we're gonna call on Mr. Fagan to review for us our health plan.
Okay. This is all good. This is all good news, and we talked a little bit about it with the statements, but we'll start with the basics here. At the beginning of the year, we had $680,000 that we rolled over from years past. We deposited $22,040, and this is COBRA premiums of people that have retired and left.
That's 2.2 million,
Yeah.
Thad.
So that's, yeah, I'm sorry, 2.2 million. So that's where all your funds came from. And then we had in claims, we had 1.2 million. Admin fees of 74,000. Excess risk, that's the insurance we buy. We funded the first 80,000 of a claim, and then we buy insurance to cover us beyond that. If you have somebody that's really bad sick, that way CUB's not exposed, but for $80,000. And then our end reserve at the end of the year, we ended up with $1.491 million. So that's what you call a really good year. If you look at the past 4 years, you see our claims this year are down from last year considerably. That's because we had more events last year. And if you see this net of $97,283 from reimbursement of excess risk insurance, that's why you bought that insurance. We had somebody that went over $97,000 over that $80,000. And that insurance we buy is down here to cover us for that. Now that insurance costs more than the 97 we got, but if you'd had 2 people or 3 people, and sometimes that happens, but this was a good year. Our dental's running pretty consistent. Our prescription drugs are running pretty consistent. Sorry about that, Jim, but but we're running pretty good on that. Admin fees are consistent. That's what Blue Cross charges us, and Delta Dental charges us to admin it all. And this is that excess risk insurance. So at year end, as Greg said, by depositing what the insurance company said it would cost us to buy that insurance, and then they would take all the risk, we self-fund, and at year end, we got $1.4 million in the kitty to help us in the future. So it definitely pays off to self-fund for us.
So when you see that reserve forward on that pie chart,
Yes,
that was the end reserve last year.
that is correct.
So this year, we have gone, paid all the claims, and actually had a positive, $320, $720, $810,000 increase.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Now, let me ask you,
11,360.
And
going forward next year, with that substantial of a growth, which again, I know you're risking that, will you continue to do the CUB deposits this year like Blue Cross has told you? Or will you do 90% of what Blue Cross has told you? What's
what we've done in the last few years is put exactly what they tell us to.
100% of what they tell you?
And it's not that we can't access that money if we need
Right.
it, but it lets you know where you stand. If we'd have done this from 1980 something when we started, that number right there would probably be $10 million.
Oh, it'd be incredible.
It would be unbelievable.
And with the unforeseen future of healthcare,
Right.
you're probably better off. The bigger numbers are going to be much less worrisome.
Right.
Okay. See, that's something the city has tried to get into just a little bit on a much smaller scale by going with higher deductibles and stuff, a lot smaller
Right.
than this scale. But that's pretty awesome.
It's worked great for us.
That's pretty awesome.
Now, this is our wellness program summary, and I don't know if Penny's familiar with our wellness program, but we have a program in-house here where we offer different services, and if people build up points at the end of the year, they can get as much as $400, and if they don't do nothing, they're gonna have to pay part of their premium. So everybody pretty much participates to try to get that, and this is where we're at. Year to date, we did our biometrics in January, had 116 people did that. That's the little quick blood draw and weigh in and things like that. We do these munch and learns, had 90 people show up to that one. That was on vascular health. We did a medic blood drive, 56 people gave blood, and if by those 56 people giving blood, everybody in this company and their dependents are covered for blood. If they need it, and that's very expensive, like $800 a thing is my understanding. We had Delta Dental come in to a hygiene class, 71 people attended that. We did a munch and learn on dealing with loss and grief and things like that. 61 people there. We did mammography screening. UT brought the bus out. They actually went to down here at First Baptist this year, so they could get some other people. And we had 11 of our employees do that, and I think that's everyone here that is eligible for that, because a lot of them have done it in the past, and for various reasons they have to go to the doctor for it. We just did in July, we did our comprehensive blood draw where they test for everything known to mankind pretty much. We had 116 people do that, and you can see that one's a little more expensive. And then these are things that we've got scheduled for the rest of the year. On-site prostate screening, we're going to do a healthy living cooking class and things like that. This program works great. I'm going to tell you two quick stories. Last year we did a thing where it's a little stool test. You go out there and you track your thing. You put the little piece of paper in there with it, Had a girl, something showed up. They said, you really need to come in and get that checked. And she's like, I'm not going to worry about it. And they insisted you need to come in and get that checked. She went and got checked. It says precancerous. Really good thing. We had another gentleman that had a PSA that was really high on this blood draw. He never checked that kind of stuff out before. Prostate cancer, it was the bad kind. They caught it. They removed it. He may not be here if that hadn't been caught. Those things save your health fund, but more importantly, they save lives. And there's no telling. There's no way I can tell you how many strokes we've saved or how many heart attacks we've saved and things like that from just looking at numbers. But looking at the people and the weight loss, and the people are tracking their blood pressure, and they're tracking their weights, their pre-diabetes, they're tracking all that. The things this program has given to those employees, there's no telling. There's no telling.
It's money well invested if it's just $16,000.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you one thing too, you can really see a difference when you come to our Christmas dinner. You can see people, there's not as much of that person as there used to be. They've lost weight.
Right.
Seriously, they've started exercising, they've started eating better, and they've lost weight. And I think that's an indicator, the results that we've had on our cost being decreased also is because that they're getting more conscious through these types of programs.
These waters we sell for $0.25, and people buy them up. They used to buy soft drinks. They used to buy honey buns. We don't have honey buns anymore,
Yeah.
They used to sit in the break room, honey bun, Coca-Cola, newspaper. Now they can buy water, go get on the treadmill, and watch,
And we do bananas.
you know, the Today Show.
Do fruit and things,
There's
yeah.
bananas back
So,
there.
Would
so-
you want to test their sugar after that honey bun and a soda for breakfast?
so it's really been a
That's
good
scary.
program, something we're very proud of.
Should be.
Now, those two stories are the only two I know of because they volunteered that, because I don't have access to that information.
That's probably
Yeah, all
HIPAA
that HIPAA
violation.
and everything, yeah.
Is that Blue Cross and Blue Cross administrating your plan and so forth? Is that something, I mean, I know you're happy with Blue Cross, they probably do a good job. Is that something that's bid out?
No, we've been with Blue Cross forever, and Blue Cross gets great discounts. I can't help but think that they get as good or better discount as anybody does.
That gets us their network cost. Network.
The
you know,
bottom
just like
line
we were
is,
paying
we,
your
we are too small to be self-insured. Most companies won't insure someone our size. So.
I mean, it's like $40-something
administrative.
a month
Right, that-
per plan, per
Person.
my family's $40-something per employee to admin all that and negotiate. I would be scared to go out there because you might get John Deere for 25, but what's their discounts at
What do you
UT
return?
Hospital and all that? You know, you can get a lower monthly, but that total admin fee of $74 for Blue Cross and Delta Dental is nothing compared to what your total costs are.
Where's the 1461540 at on the assets?
It's in other funds, other special funds. There's other numbers in that too. You know, one is the CSA stockholder loan. We had to give them money years ago, and that's part of that. And then there's that's 53,000 CSA, and then we have advance mail. You know, we have to 13,000 that we give to the billing service because they don't want to send their bills out unless they got the money there to pay the postage. You know, they don't. For some reason, they don't want to give you credit on postage.
On her balance sheet on assets?
Yeah, that right at the top. See, about the fourth line, other special funds,
Uh-huh.
1.446. That includes that 1.461.
461. Okay.
This number you're looking at is through July here on this chart. That's why that's different there. This is June. That's July. Good.
Any other questions and or comments? Thank you, Mr. Fagan. Let's move on then to item number 9. That's a review of nonprofit request.
We're holding, obviously, we're holding off till we get some confirmation from the state, Mr.
We're
Chairman.
still waiting on
We
that,
are.
okay? All right. Let's move on then to item number 10, which is other business.
I don't have any.
All righty. If there's not any other business, I'll start down at the end. I'll ask Mr. McBride if he has anything else to interject.
No, sir.
Mr. Price.
Looked like a good year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ms. Harrell.
No, sir.
Mr. Val? I will add one thing, and that is that, if you remember, I sent an email out saying unless that I heard something back from you all, we were gonna have us a workshop, when it comes time to once again review Mr. Mitchell's recommendations. I think by everybody, in effect, not responding, they're saying, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll do that next year. And so we're kind of going on record as saying that, and I can assure you that, you know, we will be doing a very extensive review. We'll get any and all questions out there, and we'll get them asked and answered.
There's a big lawsuit down going on, I think, in Arizona or Nevada. The Public Utility Commission is changing the rules about the credits they give for solar in the homes.
That's about the net metering. Yeah, they've screwed up so bad in performing the net metering. They created a monster with that, and they've realized, which is what Chris was saying, how that subsidize, all the other folks are subsidizing the solar industry.
Yeah. And that's about the end.
Oh, yeah, and then obviously the solar folks are very unhappy about that. Thus the lawsuit.
Yeah.
So the workshop will allow us to receive the information from Mr. Mitchell prior to the scheduled business meeting, correct?
Yeah, we'll have him as the facilitator in the workshop.
Okay.
And we're gonna break down any and every bit of information that he's got there and get everybody's questions asked, because I think it'll be very important so that we can assure, since our meetings are now, you know, the video and everything, that we can assure people that this is not something we're just rubber stamping, that we've gone through, that we have taken the statistical data, and that whatever decision that we make is one that we have to make for the financial health of the utility. That's the way I sum it up anyway. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.